for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the 81 All Out podcast. This is Siddhartha Vaidyanathan at SidV on Twitter. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by a special guest all the way from Dhaka, my good friend and former 81 All Out guest. Some may even call him a legend. Of course, in Bangladesh cricket circles, he is a legend. Welcome to the show, Mohammad Isam.
Thank you, Sid, for inviting me to 81 All Out. Always keen to come to your podcast and always keen to, listen to it. Like I'm an avid listener of your podcast.
Thank you, Isam. For those who don't know, and I hope there is nobody in that category, but for those who don't know, Mohammad Isam is ESPN Cricinfo's Bangladesh cricket correspondent. He has been working for them for over a decade, and he has recently come out with this book called On the Tiger's Trail. So this is a book that has been published by the Mighty Press in Dhaka, and it is a lovely collection of Isam's pieces that he has written over the years. It covers quite a lot of Bangladesh cricket, as you would expect, but there is also some very enchanting essays about players from other parts of the world. Like he has written a wonderful piece on Sikandar Raza from Zimbabwe. He has written, a nice piece about the Virat Kohli and Mohammad Amir dueling in a game. He has written fantastic piece, according to me, the best piece in that whole collection on bowling to Kevin Pietersen in the nets. And so you get a really wonderful glimpse of cricket in Bangladesh, cricketers, the sort of the personal side of cricketers, and also life of a journalist, life of covering. I mean, there's this fantastic piece on Mohammad Ashraful, where he has written about the travails of Ashraful, the ups and downs, and covering his whole career. Wonderful. So I would recommend all of you to pick it up. There is a beautiful foreword by Rahul Bhattacharya, one of the finest cricket writers going around. Personally, one of my favorite cricket writers. And again, a treat to read Rahul always. And he sets it up really well. So quick reminder before I forget to listeners, we recently republished a classic work of cricket literature. We're talking about a cricket book, but let me mention another cricket book that we recently republished, Gideon Haig's The Summer Game. This is covering Australian cricket's history in the 50s and 60s. We recently did a podcast with Gideon talking about the book, talking about that period. And it's a marvelous book. It is a masterpiece of cricket writing. And please pick it up. I will put in all the links in the show notes, and please recommend it, etc. This is, of course, the third book we are republishing after Mike Marques's War Minus the Shooting, a travelogue of the 1996 World Cup, and Mike Coward's Cricket Beyond the Bazaar, which chronicles Australian cricket's visits to the subcontinent in the 1980s. So anyway, having said all that, Isam, congratulations on the book, and tell us a bit about what sort of prompted you to this, and also how it's been in the first few weeks of putting it out.
Yeah, it was an idea from one of the publishers who I knew from my school days. He's my school senior. He's the co-founder of Mighty Press, and he always has been pushing me to go a little, do something different. So we've been trying to do a children's book. I think that'll be out hopefully later this year. It's a children's book on Bangladesh cricket. But he thought that to have something on the way, there should be a book he's been following me for the last 10, 12 years, writing for ESPN Cricinfo. So he wanted me to do an anthology of my work, and he said, just go through your work and give me 25 pieces that I want to publish and see how it goes, because it's a very what should I call it, to put it in a good way, it's a very small market of English books in Bangladesh, especially sports. There hasn't been many Actually, this year there have been two. Mine and another journalist has taken out and published a book. But it's very rare to have an English book in Bangladesh. Despite so many people writing really nice books in Bengali, there isn't really a sports market even for Bengali books. So we thought that we'd just fly out a test balloon and see how it works. And with a bit of social media marketing and all these things, we have been able to almost sell out the first print run in this sort of 1 month. It's been 1 month since it went into online orders. So I'm quite happy that people have actually bought it. Thinking that it's not like India or England where people are used to buying cricket books and used to seeing cricket books on bookshelves in bookstores. So I think that's where I'm slightly satisfied that without much promotion work or without much, because I was extremely busy with Bangladesh playing against England and Ireland in the last 4 weeks. They've played 13 matches in 4 weeks, so I've been following them all around the country, and ultimately they haven't paid much attention to the book, but people have liked it. People have said that they're quite happy seeing whatever I've written.
That's great to hear, and yes, I think there is still pretty smallish but still quite a sizable market for these things. It is a niche market, but I'm happy that quite the first print run is almost done, and I'm hoping that this also leads to more books from you and more. I mean, this is an anthology, but I'm hoping that it leads to more original books on players and maybe biographies, maybe something about the period of certain period in Bangladesh cricket. Yeah, so all the best. I will link the sort of the website where listeners can order it. This is, of course, available only in Bangladesh at the moment, but hopefully in due course it will be available in all geographies. And we will keep a tab of that, and whenever we can, we will be linking that too. So great to hear. I actually, first starting off, I did mention Rahul's forward, but maybe you can talk a bit about it. He's written quite evocative forward, and did you learn things about yourself while reading it?
Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea I was perceived that way. I think that's the beauty of just putting your head down and working for 10 years for a purpose. I mean, Rahul was my hero. He's still my hero. He's the reason I got into writing is Pandits from Pakistan. To be fair with you, to be honest with you, I just read that. I think I've read that cover to cover at least 50 times, and I still go back to it whenever I'm feeling a bit, having a bit of a writer's block. I go through that book, how smooth it is, and even his second book. I mean, I can go on about Rahul throughout this podcast, and it won't be enough for me. But the way his book, the way it appealed to me, and I'll just tell you one. The moment I met him actually was 2018 when we were having a meeting in Bangalore. A lot of our correspondents had arrived the night before that some conference, and I remember when I saw Rahul, I was just staring at him, and I suddenly realized 6 or 7 of us were just staring at him because we were all seeing him for the first time. So I later shared with a colleague called Anisha Ghosh, and I told her that I was really awestruck. She said, "Yeah, everyone was awestruck by him." Like he's such a gentle guy, but he's like my biggest hero in writing. So I obviously, if being my first book, I thought he should write it. And the running joke between us is that I have to teach him Bengali. And so he asked me if he should do it in Bengali. I said no, it's this one is in English. So next time if I ever write a book in Bengali, he will again attempt to write a foreword in Bengali. But it was really nice of him to write it. And I also should mention that I think some of the pieces that I've put in this book are edited by you, Sid. I think the Ashraful piece probably I bothered you
Yes,
for about
Cricket
3
Monthly,
months.
Cricket Monthly
Yes.
days when Cricket Monthly was
Yeah.
actually a monthly, and we used to
Yeah.
put out regular pieces. Yes, I remember the Ashraful piece. I remember
Yeah.
the Dhaka Premier League. I
Oh,
think there
yes.
might have been about 3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you to you for sticking by in that really, these pieces take a long time. I mean, people probably don't realize what the editorial process is sometimes, Cricinfo and the Cricket Monthly. So it's quite rigorous and it's extremely good. So many of these pieces are pitch perfect. I mean, whatever I have written, the first draft, it has nothing to do with what has come out later.
Yeah, I mean, editing is a valuable part of any process of writing, especially long form writing, books, and things. So, but let me also mention to listeners that editing does not exist without the writer. So, an editor can only work with the clay that the writer provides them with. And so, someone like Isam, I remember he used to write the pieces, and when I used to edit them, I used to often look for extra detail because ultimately writing is about detail. And when you mention that somebody is wearing certain, somebody wore a blazer, you also want to know what blazer, what color blazer, what type of blazer. Was it something different? Why are you mentioning the blazer? Did it catch your eye? And then I used to mention that in the notes. And immediately, Sam, of course, uh, used to get back with the details. So, a writer and editor work in that way together. You try and make the piece better. So it was great. It was great working with him because he's never short of an answer. He never says, I don't know. He will always find out. And even if it takes a few days, he will always get back to you with the answer. So, yeah. So ultimately, it is. Things might have changed from the first draft, but it is your piece. So don't give us too much credit also. So.
No, of course not. I mean, it's when you are writing about a subject set which probably not a lot of people have idea about. An editorial process comes handy, and asking questions comes handy when you know that the person editing also doesn't have much idea about Bangladesh cricket, which that's the whole idea. I mean, I'm trying to write a piece where people know about Bangladesh cricket, but also this person who's editing my piece is also reading it for the first time, and this sometimes I even get a bit confused, what the other person is going to think, because there are facts and factors about Bangladesh cricket which are quite unique. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen here which don't really happen in other parts of the world, but then it gets amalgamates. It gets I think it melds with the cricket here. Sort of, it happens everywhere. I mean, in England there's a culture of cricket. In India there's a culture of club cricket, and then you have Ranji Trophy, and then you have these things are also there in Bangladesh, but in a different format. So it takes a bit of time for the person. When I'm writing daily news, also, I mean, sometimes my colleagues get a little, they're like, "Oh my God, this is how things happen." The board president actually does everything in your country. I'm like, yeah. There's a whole cricket board, but he takes all the decisions, all the calls. So these are the quirks of covering Bangladesh cricket.
Yeah, so that's the other thing I wanted to chat with you about you've been doing this for a while now, and in the early days, I guess when you got into it for the first time, so much of it would have been new to you, meeting all the intrigue and the players, and getting to know them, asking them questions, and even just meeting some players would have been given you goosebumps because you would have watched them play. You would have perhaps idolized some of them, and then to actually then be asking them questions, interviewing them, etc. So but over the years, obviously, now you are almost like perhaps older than the entire all the players in the Bangladesh team now, and to you're now, when you're interviewing them, now it's a totally different dynamic because you've seen them from when they were playing probably junior cricket, or you've seen them from when they were kids. So talk a bit about that, of the change of being the starstruck newbie journalist to somebody who's now been doing it for a while, and who's now I don't know, talk a bit about the journey.
Yeah, Sid, look, it's actually a little interesting because I actually played with some of them when I started out. So I was a player. I was a club level cricketer, and in club level, I mean it's professional level at that point. When I was working in before Cricinfo, I was working in a newspaper called the Daily Star, where I was a full time sub editor, but I was also covering matches and doing interviews. So there I remember them telling me that, okay, you're not going to be intimidated by players because you've actually met them or played with them. I've played with a few, played for Bangladesh, and then but still, I mean, at that level, meeting them, and then when they started to become stars, it becomes slightly more hectic to make sure that they get the full, the full. They tell me the whole story and not just tell me that okay, you know what it is, just write it. Sometimes it happens. That was that is more about players that I've known all my life, and then I've had some small connections with players as well. I mean, if you talk about Mustafizur Rahman, he's someone I worked with his uncle in the Daily Star. His uncle is a well-known reporter, and I used to work under him for a while. And I figured out about Mustafiz before, I think, when he was 16 or 15, that he has this really crazy, nephew in a small village in Bangladesh who's crazy about bowling, and he worships a guy called Wasim Akram and has a poster of Mohammad Amir in his room. And then it turns out that this kid wants to come to Dhaka and play, and I kind of helped him to come to Dhaka, get into a base camp, and it's all So because of my long affiliation with cricket, I've played since I was 12 years old, and I've played club cricket for about 10 years. So I've known players. So that was one part of it. But then, the intimidating part or the difficult part was getting some news from the cricket board. And here we have a culture of reporters. This is pre-pandemic. Reporters hanging out in the cricket board or inside the board office. It's quite common. It was quite common since the early days. And even when, I think it's I would say up to 2019 that, we would, one of the things that we did on non-match days or when there was no series going on was just roam around in the cricket board. And I know it sounds very, it took my seniors in cricket for a little while to realize that, yeah, I'm always hanging out in the cricket board. It's not as if I'm friends with them. It's just that I'm looking for news, and that's the culture here. We would sit in the board media manager's room, or we can, it wasn't totally allowed, but we would just use our contacts to walk around and find news in the cricket operations committee or some committee just to look for news.
And then suddenly as you began your Mohammad Ashraful piece, suddenly Ashraful walks in one day.
Yeah, so because it's the cricket board office and you can see everyone walking around. You'll see the coaches walking around. You'll see the selectors there. Sometimes you would see I've gone through a few board presidents as well, so they would also be there, and then you could talk to them. The board CEO is sometimes available. They get annoyed because we take up a lot of their time, but that's how it is here. And so that was one of the new things for me in this job that I had to, especially when I joined Cricinfo, there was no one else as a backup, so I had to do it every day. There was no day offs towards the start, and then slowly when I got a handle on things, it became slightly easier. But then then came the traveling, and then came the tours, and then, as you said, I've done a few interviews and stuff. So I think it was a bit of a backward journey for me in a way that I didn't start off as a newbie in that sense, but also I tried to use as much context as possible in my early days so that I can get some news out, and stuff like that. So yeah, that was the start of the journey, and then slowly it got to a point where now I think I'm the oldest. I'm older than all of them. There was a time when I was probably younger. Now that I think of it, when I started, it was quite an old team. Habibul Bashar, Abdul Razak, Mohammad Rafiq, that Dave Watmore's team, where everyone was way older than me. I think
I don't believe you didn't mention Javed Omar.
Javed Omar, of course. Do you know his nickname is, we call him Golla Bhai. His nickname, he's a amazing character. He'll spend like hours with you talking cricket. He's probably one of the few people who doesn't want to talk about anything else. In Bangladesh, former cricketers don't always want to talk about cricket. And he still, I think he still feels that it's his career shouldn't have ended then. He still feels that way. So that's amazing about him. And I remember writing a piece about him. I think it was called Why I Hate to Love. Hate to Love. Yeah, I should have put that piece in this. I forgot about it completely.
That is one of my favorite pieces of yours, Isam. I was disappointed it was not there.
It was not there. The story goes that when I wrote that piece and it was published, I got a call from Nafis Iqbal, who's Tamim Iqbal's elder brother. And he said, Isam bhai, I loved it so much that I actually called Javed Omar bhai and I read the whole thing to him. And he at one point he got a bit uncomfortable, and then he said, "Okay, I'll read it myself." And then then the same evening, he called up and he said, that was the first time I think I spoke to him after a long time. He said, "Isam, I read this piece. My son read it. I was very, I was slightly skeptical whether you have written something bad about me. But my son said, other dad, it's probably the best thing that anyone has ever written about you. It's a huge compliment." So I said, "Yeah, I've seen you play when I was a child." And all of it is till today, it's true that whenever a Bangladeshi opener doesn't do well, they say, he was a good guy. We lost him early. We shouldn't have kicked him out so early. And then if someone plays slowly, it's always him that we go to, that, oh, he's playing like Javed Omar.
Yeah, no, I only mentioned that because I like that piece. But yeah, just one more question about the big picture. Now you're mentioning about, hanging out in the board office often, meeting these coaches, meeting these players, meeting the officials, everything. How is the dynamic like from a journalistic point of view? Because you know many of them at a personal level, you see them daily, talk to them about, obviously, you talk to them about everything, a lot of other things other than cricket. You know a lot about their personal struggles and things. But also as a journalist, there are times in which you need to, be critical of them and you need to ask certain questions. And so talk a bit about that dynamic, and I'm curious to know how it is on a daily basis.
So when foreign journalists come to Bangladesh, they can't believe it sometimes that we get so close to players and we know them by first name basis or nickname basis. Sometimes that I think the first thing that I noticed about senior journalists, and we have got some extremely good ones in Bangladesh. We have got Utpal Shubro, we've got Arifur Rahman Babu, we've got Saidu Zaman. They are really path breakers in the sense that they wrote about things, that other journalists in Bangladesh and other spheres never really got into. There's a lot of stories about how the board has done excesses and how the players have often been the sort of the often haven't got their due. So there have been a lot of great pieces by them. So I've seen them say, we have in Bengali we speak in three tones with someone. So I can call you Apni. Apni is giving you the respect because it's because you're older to me, or someone I respect, or someone I want to put some honor to your name. Tumi is for, maybe I call my parents Tumi because I'm friends with them, or with my friends I would call them Tumi. And Tui is someone who's younger to me. I can call them Tui. So there are three ways you can actually speak to someone in Bengali. I've seen these seniors call the players by Tumi because they're slightly younger to these players are younger to the journalists, so that's why Tumi. But whenever they have spoken to them or addressed them in public or in a press conference, it's always Apni. Like Shakib can be Tumi to Utbol Shubro when they meet and talk, or I think he calls him Apni all the time. But in a press conference, Utpal Shubro or anyone would not talk to them as if they are talking to them normally. So that was one of the first things. And then, as you said, how does a journalist keep his objectivity? It's difficult. It has created a lot of heartbreaks over the years. That I've had a former player when he got dropped. It's well known that Khalid Mashoud was dropped from the 2007 team because of Mushfiqur was the rising star at that time, and he felt hard done by journalists. By some journalists, he thought that they could have given him a warning because sorry, he felt that the cricket board was, as any senior player would feel in a situation like this. But I remember that it was fairly done. It wasn't unfair. There was a huge cry for the cricket board. The cricket board was criticized for the way they dealt with Khalid Mashoud. And I remember the Daily Star went very hard on the cricket board, but then Mushfiq did so well that story fizzled out. But there have been numerous times when I've seen that journalists have had to, for lack of a better word, break their friendship sometimes with the players. That trust sometimes goes away. It has happened to me. It has happened to me a few times that I've had to be objective about a player or someone that maybe I was friendly with that person, but there comes a time when you have to do it. So sometimes we do it gradually, to soften the blow, but sometimes you have to, break it open and then I mean, there's no rule book or any playbook for it, but you just see others do it and probably learn from their mistakes or learn from how they exactly did it. It's not easy, but this relationship is very unique that we have with the players even today. I mean, even the youngest players will try to, they have this idea that journalists in Bangladesh, I mean, not all journalists in Bangladesh are enemies of the cricket board or the player. It's not very friendly, but it's also not that bad. I mean, nowadays, I hear from all over people from all over journalists from all over the world that it's an envy of other journalists that we have this access, and because Bangladesh are also doing well, it's usually, it's quite well known that associate countries or smaller countries, players from smaller countries, they will be a little more friendly with journalists because of they would want that that sort of exposure. But in Bangladesh, cricket was always big, but maybe Bangladesh cricket wasn't big. But now that Bangladesh cricket is also getting big, we still, I mean, despite COVID-related restrictions, and cricket board has used that very well to restrict our movement in the cricket board offices, which I think is good. I mean, finally, someone has put an end to us roaming around in the cricket board. But
Finally,
yeah,
they said, okay, throw these fellows out.
yeah, they would have. They. I remember, like, in 2016 when there was a terrorist attack in Bangladesh and everything was under lock, and everything was locked down in Bangladesh. All offices were locked down, and England were supposed to come to Bangladesh. So that was the first time when they put a restriction on journalists going into the board office. But I would pretend that I work here. I'll just go in, and the guards would sometimes. And there are guards who actually thought that I worked there because I went there so often. I got away with it 2 or 3 times, and then someone caught up to me and said, "No, no, no, you can't go upstairs now."
Good con, good con.
Yeah.
And talking about journalists and objectivity, I think Bangladesh journalists, in my experience at least, I don't know how it is now, but were the most vocal in the press box, and they were almost like the most vocal cheerleaders of the team. I mean, of course, it was in the early days. I can totally understand because there were a lot of calls for Bangladesh to not have test status. People were saying that they were such a bad team that they should never have been given test status. So I can understand why journalists would be really vocal about this and want their team to do well. And especially when Bangladesh did well against other teams, the journalists used to be visibly happy. But how is it now? And what are your thoughts on that about journalists being cheering the team, so to speak?
Sid, I think what you should also consider here is that journalists were the hardest. They had the hardest time because they had no relation with the cricket board or the players, but their office would send them to these expensive tours and expect, with the hope that Bangladesh could maybe win a game. Because I think that cricket is a front page deal in Bangladesh. I mean, whenever they win, even now when they beat England 3-0, it's a front page story. It's a newspaper front page story. It's like a leading news in the news channel. So from that perspective, for a long time they would lose very often, especially on tours. So I think that came out in a sense of relief almost that they're doing well. I mean, I punch my fist sometimes when they do well. I mean, seriously. I mean, because there is an expectation. There's always this expectation among journalists that if the team does well, the team that you're writing about, that's a slightly an easier job than criticizing them all the time. So there has been spells where Bangladesh have lost about, I think, in the span of 5 years, they've lost 47 test matches and ODIs and whatnot. I mean, they were like the worst team in the world. And then that Cardiff, I wasn't there, but I would imagine that in Cardiff 2005, when Bangladesh beat Australia in that miraculous game, Bangladesh were the worst team in the world at that point, and Australia were obviously number one in all formats. Like in every sphere of cricket, they were the best. And when they beat them, I would imagine Bangladeshi journalists getting happy because, as I said, I mean, they don't have any sort of, that the only interest is trying to cover cricket at that time. And I just feel that they have to answer back to their office, these journalists, that okay, I should be sent to the next tour, but they lose every game on tours, or even at home they were losing all the games. But this is what I find very admirable about the media in Bangladesh, that despite losing for many, many, many years, these newspapers, these TV channels have sent people abroad. They've had 2 reporters for cricket matches. I sometimes couldn't believe that a newspaper can have two guys just covering cricket when all the cricket team was doing was losing. But then there was always that hope that okay, that one game they'll win, that one game, that tide will turn, and that's what happened. I mean, people were very patient. I think the hardest one was for the journalists to follow. I think fans also had a hard time following this cricket team, but I think journalists also, the amount of money they have spent, the media in Bangladesh on cricket, slowly they're getting it back, I think.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, and it's totally understandable. I mean, it's for somebody from say India or England or Australia may not get the reason why this is happening. I mean, for us, it is we are seeing journalists cheering the players, and it is a little awkward, but there is also a huge background to it, and I understand completely what you're talking about. And as long as eventually it is not reflected in the copy, that and you can see that the Bangladesh journalists, they criticize when they have to. They don't hold back. They don't hold back any punches. So it's not like they are constantly cheering the team and making excuses for them. So yeah, I mean, I think eventually you judge a journalist by their work and not by their what they are seen to be doing in the press box. So yeah, totally understand. Need to go back to that, continuing on this trail about the player journalist relationship. I thought we can get a little into that Mohammad Ashraful kind of piece, because there are instances like that where you spoke about hope for the Bangladesh cricket team, but for someone like Ashraful, was the hope invested in a player like him was so immense. The time in which he came, the kind of talent he had, the century that he got in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, and then the century against India, Cardiff, you just mentioned. Not only Cardiff, but then there was a game against England as well after that in Trent Bridge. So the kind of hope that was invested in a player like that, and then to then have to cover not only his extended failures that in between these successes, but then also to the extent of the fixing that he got embroiled with the team. And then you personally had when you asked that question in the basement, you can describe that where it was, and then him breaking down in front of you. I mean, it can't be easy to have a player of that stature breaking down in a press conference. Doesn't happen every day, and very hard for a journalist to even reconcile with, right?
I mean, that exact moment. I mean, I think I was the second batch of journalists who arrived in his house that day, because his house is on the eastern part of Dhaka, and it took us a while to get from the airport. I mean, we just went on a whim. We didn't know others were going, and this is a period when it was social media was becoming big, but mainstream media wasn't taking that too seriously. I think 2014 ish in Bangladesh at least. So there was a lot of pressure for mainstream media to get it right or get the news quickly. So I remember going there with another journalist in his on his motorbike, and when we arrived, there was one batch coming out, and we thought, okay, so maybe he has spoken, so he will speak to us. And I was feeling a little apprehensive because I had already written a piece about how he probably let the team down or the country down. In one of my pieces, I had written it or something, and I didn't know how we would react, and others had written even more fiercely at that time. But he was there, and he was always a bit, he's a gentleman, so he would never. I've heard stories that he's never refused any journalist in the sense that if they've turned up at his house or done come in front of him, he would at least speak to them. So when we spoke, he was speaking at an even tone, and then I asked him a question about regret, because he had just come from Sri Lanka, I think, or he'd come from Zimbabwe. But in the Sri Lanka series, he scored his career best 190 in the Gaul test, where Mustafizur Rahman got a double 100. So I remember I pointed out a few shots that he was playing that, you're getting it right now. And then you almost scored a double 100. Is there a regret that you've now in this situation? And he just broke down, and it was captured on TV, and I think I have a photo of it. Someone sent me a photo of it immediately. But yeah, I mean, it got very uncomfortable, and we tried to calm him down, and then he was quickly, he recovered. But then you could understand what he probably there was regret, and probably there was regret that he got caught at a time when I think it was actually working out for him. I mean, there have been speculation about his involvement for a long time, but there was no proof, so we couldn't really justify it. But when it happened in the BPL, and there was quite hard evidence, and the ICC got involved, and then you kind of figured out that it was a bit of what do you say? It was maybe he had done something wrong a long time, slightly longer time ago, or slightly before he actually got caught. So I think there was that sort of regret that now that, because he was also getting dropped during that time. That was the first season I think he didn't play regularly for Bangladesh in 10 years. So, but then he went back and he scored some runs in the team. He wasn't the original choice in Sri Lanka as far as I remember. He was like a third choice. Two players got injured, then he got in, and he scored that unbelievable 190. And he had won them a one-day game in Sri Lanka with a quick fat 30. Then in Zimbabwe, he scored some runs. So he was again becoming something of a reliable batter. He had never been a reliable batter, but then this thing happened, and that was it. I mean, it was for many people, apparently it wasn't a huge surprise. It was a big surprise for me, because I never really thought that Bangladeshi players could actually take that step towards the darker side of cricket. But well, it happened, and yeah, I mean, it was a moment that I had to capture in an interview later. And when I met him later at the same house, he was quite calm, and I had a photographer with me who had known Ashraful since he was a 15-year-old or 16-year-old genius. So I took him. He's a very well-known photographer, because back then I think we did some photos, personalized photos as well, for the pieces. So I remember taking him, and then we had a long chat. And then after the recorder was turned off, we also had a longer chat about everything else. And yeah, and I think you remember from the piece, as far as I can remember, he opened up before I could even ask him a question. It was like, yeah, I did it. Now let's talk about it. So it wasn't,
Yeah.
he wasn't going to beat around the bush. He was going to talk about it immediately.
Yeah, that was definitely admirable from his side, that he didn't want to really couch it, or he didn't want to be politically correct. He just came out, and then he also said how there was a little bit of there was regret, definitely, about the whole thing. And yeah, so that was great. Also, one of the other things of the piece was that there was a camp in which, when you were much younger, when you and Ashraful were together, and you were and he even complained, I think, to you, because you were bowling left arm wrist spin. And so you've known him for a long time.
I have known him since I was 12. He was the captain of the under 13 team those days, and I was for some reason I was a left arm unorthodox bowler. I think I was a big Shane Warne fan, and it was one of my cousins who played professional cricket for a long time in Bangladesh. He talked it out of me. He said, "No, no, no, you can't really do that in this country. It's the country of left arm spinners, so you should start bowling, start bowling orthodox." But this was way
It will
before
be
that.
unpatriotic to bowl wrist spin.
So I remember I was in a net session with the under 13 team, Bangladesh under 13 team, and I was bowling wrist spin, and all the other kids were like, we were all 12 or 13 at that time, and they all said, "Oh wow, we should also try it." And then everyone started to try it, and obviously it wasn't going well. It was all double bounce or wide down the leg side, and Ashraful was the most well-known young cricketer in Bangladesh at that time. Ashraful and Nafis Iqbal, Tamim's older brother. So Ashraful was having batting, and then he complained to the coach that this kid is bowling wrist spin for no reason, and these other kids are following him. I remember there were like 20 bowlers, 20 spinners there, right arm and left arm bowlers. So we all started to bowl leg spin to him, or I was bowling wrist spin, and everyone else was trying out. And then he complained to the coach. The coach said, "No, no, no, do what you can do. You guys, you're not, wrist spinners. You should start bowling what you do." And yeah, I mean, Ashraful was. I mean, I remember then slowly growing up. I gave up cricket for a while because I was, in a school where cricket wasn't really encouraged. But Ashraful obviously continued. His long walks from his home to one of the grounds near my house It's about 10, 12 kilometers he would walk every day with his coach, Wahidul Ghani. He's a legendary coach here. He's like the Ramakant Achrekar of Bangladesh, you can say. He's raised a lot of great cricketers here. So that story always touched me because he was a very hardworking guy, and as he's also a cricket nut. I mean, he remembers bygone era matches, and he's like he knows exact statistics of Sachin Tendulkar and Brian Lara and himself. All these numbers he remembers, and that's something unique for a Bangladeshi cricketer. Usually they just focus on their own game and they don't really bother. But Ashraful, he's hosted Sachin at his house in 2010, I think, when India were here, and he treated him with Ilish Mach, which is the hilsa, the one of our most well-known fishes. So Ashraful was that kind of a character during that time when Bangladesh really didn't open up to foreign teams or were not doing well. So he has had his moments. He's had his great moments in international cricket.
You have written a piece, of course, about this left arm spin phenomenon in Bangladesh cricket. But if you for your next book, an idea for your next book is list out all the left arm spinners who have played for Bangladesh and write one chapter on each, and then your book will be done. Okay, so talk a bit about this. Why? Okay, I mean, I can understand some reasons why this is the case, but come on, this is a national obsession, man. What is happening? Why is this left arm spin become like this national kind of patriotic sign?
It's a cottage industry. It's a small industry, but I've written in that piece. I've written in great detail that it's there's a saying, right? What something is the mother of necessity or something I forgot.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
The mother of invention. Yeah, exactly. So Bangladesh is a one-day country. It's a one-day cricket country. Going back to the 70s, they have played 45 over one-day league, the Dhaka Premier League, which I've written extensively about. But that is a one-day tournament, and one-day cricket is like in our blood, frankly. I mean, we don't really go into T20 until very recently. Test cricket isn't our thing. It's ODI cricket, one-day cricket. In one-day cricket, you need economical bowlers, and I think that's where it started. It started all of a sudden in the late 80s or very early 90s through really good bowlers, Mohammad Rafiq and Enamul Haq Moni, who were both left-arm fast bowlers. Coincidentally, Enamul Haq Moni was bowling left-arm quick for in a Dhaka League match when a former Pakistani cricketer told him that why don't you try spin because it's not working. He tried it, it worked, he kept bowling spin. Separately, in another incident, Mohammad Rafiq, who was a very quick left-arm fast bowler, he was bowling, and then again, slow wicket, one-day match, there was runs leaking. Wasim Haider, who has played for Pakistan, he was playing in Dhaka, in the Dhaka League. He told him during a drinks break that, why don't you try spin? He started to bowl spin, he stuck to it. Then he became the highest wicket taker that season. Then they picked him in the Bangladesh team. He did well. He got Tendulkar out in the Asia Cup in 1995. The moment he got Tendulkar out, I remember everyone wanted to be that guy who got Sachin Tendulkar out, because in 1995, you can imagine what Tendulkar meant to kids in the subcontinent, at least in Bangladesh and India and some of these countries. So
that was around his peak. I mean, 95 to 98 was around his peak. Yeah.
So when Rafiq got him out a couple of times, I think in 2 one-day tournaments, everyone wanted to be a left-arm spinner. And then came that 97 ICC trophy win. And then kids started to flock to cricket academies. Cricket academies started to, jump out of nowhere. And then you could see this army of left-arm spinners, young kids, like now we know them by name. It's Shakib Al Hassan, it's Arafat Sani, it's Ilyas Sani. We know the names, and Enamul Haq Jr. All these kids started to come out to bowl left arm. Shakib was mainly a batter, but because he was a lefty, I think that's why he would bowl in the nets in BKSP, and then he slowly developed it. But all the others I've known through cricket academies in Dhaka. BKSP is situated outside Dhaka. It's a residential school. Bangladesh Kriya Shikha Pratishthan. It was established in the mid-80s, where you might know someone, Rabid Imam, who's the BCB.
Imam.
Yes, he was in the first batch, in the first cricket batch.
In fact, you and Rabid came on the podcast to talk about Bangladesh and their pre-test years.
Right.
So he mentioned this and that. Yeah.
So that's where Shakib is also from. Shakib, Mushfiq, Mominul Haq, Nasir Hussain. These are the some of the players that have come out of PKSP. So that's where Shakib learned left arm spin, and then Dhaka Premier League teams always wanted left arm spinners because it worked. 10 overs, 30 runs, 1 wicket. They would love it. I mean, that's where left arm spin became so important. And off spinners were rare. A left arm spinner also would be a lefty batsman towards the. And we had a huge dearth of left handed batsmen until Shahriar Nafis and Tamim Iqbal started to make their debuts. So I just feel that it's all out of necessity that left arm spin became so important for Dhaka League. And when it becomes important for Dhaka League, obviously it's working. So the Bangladesh team picks this bowler, and when Mohammad Rafiq has done well, that lineage continued. I mean, it was quite. It was what should I say? It is actually quite natural for us pick left arms.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. I mean, it's a lovely piece as well, and it's a beautiful story. And we were talking about it actually during Australia's recent tour to India, where they felt that the only way to win in India is to have a left arm spinner in your ranks, and they actually sent back Ashton Agar, who was part of the squad, to get Matthew Kuhneman in. He actually flew all the way in to here, and they were saying that he's one of the very few. World left arm spinners who could be world class. And so we were talking and saying that perhaps the team that has the best chance on India's spinning wickets is Bangladesh at the moment in terms of Test cricket. But unfortunately, when Bangladesh come, India will never prepare spinning wickets. They will prepare wickets that suit the fast bowlers because that is what gives their strength.
Yeah, Bangladesh obviously they toured in 2019. They played two test matches in Indore and Kolkata, and they were very quick wickets, and it was quite obvious. I mean, even Bangladesh were in a bit of a mess at that time. They had just come out of a players' strike, and the test matches ended in 2 or 3 days. But in Hyderabad, when they played in 2017, I think the spin. I don't think the spinners did that well, but I mean the batters had a bit of a decent time in the second innings. But it's the intimidating factor. I think if Bangladesh does play in India regularly at some point, even if it's just ODIs, I mean, they could start doing well. But otherwise, I think touring them just twice in 20 years, that also puts a bit of strain on the players that, playing in India. For Bangladesh, I think playing in India is as big as playing in England or playing in Australia. I think they consider India and Pakistan as the places where they want to really do well, and that's where the big prestige comes these days.
Sure. I think that all that is true, and obviously you would want to tour a place regularly to have an idea of the conditions. But I think Taijul, Mehdi, and Shakib are a formidable spin trio. Unfortunately, I don't think even if they come to India as I don't think they will get the wickets that will favor them. They will get more wickets that will favor Shami and the Indian fast bowlers. But anyway, back to your book and your pieces. We should talk about your playing days, your playing career, which eventually led to one of the great moments in your sort of life, which was bowling to Kevin Pietersen over a long stretch of a practice session. You have written a wonderful piece about it, talking about the intricacies of Peterson and his reactions, and Andy Flower, who was the coach at that time, sort of telling you what to bowl and all that. It's a wonderful piece. But yeah, tell us a bit about that. Your memories. How was it like bowling to one of the greats?
So England were in Bangladesh in 2010, and they had sent the Andrew South wasn't touring. Alistair Cook was the captain, and I was still playing cricket and working in Daily Star, but I had left Daily Star for about 9 months before this incident happened. So I wasn't back in. I wasn't working then. Um, I think what happened was one evening I was bowling in the nets, and I was bowling quite well to Matt Pryor, I think, and I think Craig Keyswetter was there. And once I had bowled to them, Andy Flower told me to go and join KP in the indoor nets. And KP told me to chuck some, not bowl, but chuck some left arm spin to him for like half an hour. And after that, he said, "Okay, bowl." And I bowled to him for a while. There, I think he figured out that he needs to do some more work. So he came out and he said, "Just hang around for a little while." I think, like after everyone left, Flower took me aside and said that tomorrow at midday, can you come over and we'll do a session with. We'll have a separate session. I didn't hear him quite well. I said, "Oh, sure, I'll be there at 12." I mean, Andy Flower tells you to come at 6 in the morning. You'll come at 6 in the morning. Um, I got there and there was no one in the nets. I thought it was a prank or something. That why would they ask me to come alone? And then there was Andy Flower standing in one corner. I said, "Yeah, okay, you've arrived. Get ready, stretch. You'll have to bowl to KP all day." I said, "Oh, that's new." I mean, I haven't done that to anyone. I mean, not apart from my friends. I haven't bowled to someone on my own just all day, or you know.
You have only bowled to Tumi. You have not bowled to Apni.
Yeah. Exactly. So KP, got ready. He was warmed up, and I started to bowl to him. And then slowly, Andy Flower was standing as the umpire, and he would tell me after about every maybe 4 or 5 overs, he would ask me, "What sort of field do you have? Why would you pick a fielder there? Why wouldn't you do this?" And then I started to got him out a few times. And he asked me, "How are you getting him out?" And I told him because of this, because of that. One of the things that I found quite easy to bowl to KP was, I think he has this huge stride, which is already he has his stance, which is quite wide, and I think that's how he plays. He later told me that's how he likes to play fast bowling. He wouldn't change it for a spinner. But then I told him that he's set up for a leg before decision. And Andy Flower said, "How do you know?" I said, "I'll show you how." So after a few balls, I got him out LB with trying to get him with the one that was slightly slower and spun a little more. And then Andy Flower said, "Wow, that you actually said that you do that." Then he understood that, yeah, I knew what I was doing. Then he said, "Okay, you set your fields. We'll talk to him about it." At the hour mark, I think we had a water break, and then I just asked KP that, "Would you mind if I asked you a question?" He said, "Yeah, go ahead." I said, "Why do you have a wide stance? What is the point of that?" He said, "Look, I'll play 700 to 800 balls against fast bowling in my home season, which is the county or English summer. I don't want to change it for a spinner, because if I change my stance, I have to change like 20 other things. So I'll just go with it and try to fix it." And the relationship he had with Flower back then, I mean, I wasn't a journalist at that time, but I was a journalist. Like I had done 3 years of work, and I could understand that they were very friendly, and not just friendly. I think they had a sort of a maybe a Southern African connection also. It seemed like they had their accents going, the Zimbabwean accent and the South African accent, which are they were quite comfortable with each other. And having read what happened later and having heard what happened later, that was quite an intriguing part. And then about 2 hours or 2.5 hours later, the England players started to come. So they had an ODI game next day. So Flower had taken out 2 extra hours for just KP, and then the team started to filter through. And Graham Swan was one of the first ones to arrive, and he was massaging my shoulder. He said, "How long has it been?" I said, 2.5 hours. He said, "Yeah, I know. They have." And the fact later I realized that PCB doesn't really give a lot of left arm spinners to visiting teams in the nets. I mean, it's a tactical thing. So that's why they had got me separately. And because I spoke a bit of English, so they were like, "Yeah, let's get him separately." And by the end of it, I think the only regret I have is KP had asked me to take something from his, large, you call them coffin, the large bags.
Yeah.
Just take what you want. And I said, no, I don't want anything. This is enough for me. I bowled to you. I was very happy with that. And I hung around for the rest of the day, and I bowled to the other bowler. So basically from 12 in the afternoon to about 6 in the evening, I bowled to them all day. And I helped them. But next day he got out to Shakib, like very quickly. If you see footage of that series, I think he got out of 6 innings, he got out to left arm spin 5 times. So it really didn't help him.
Yeah, I think, but I think that it wasn't that the series when that whole Rahul Dravid incident happened.
Yes, the letter.
Yeah. So because after that, I think there was a bit of a reinvention, because when he went to Sri Lanka and then India and Pakistan, he had some spectacular knocks.
I've also bowled to Indian players in the nets. I've bowled to England under 19 team in the long time ago. Alistair Cook was also the captain then, Ravi Bopara and all these guys. But the abiding memory I have of of the Indian nets is bowling to Virendra Sehwag, and then after 2 or 3 balls, I was just expecting someone to take the ball away from me because this guy he's a murderer of spinners. And Suresh Raina would say sorry to me every time he hit me for a six. He's like, sorry, boss. Please keep bowling here, because I think they can. Some of them seem to be playing spin with their eyes closed. I bonded over bowling with Amit Mishra. This was again in 2010 when India were traveling. They're playing a tri-nation with Bangladesh and also a test series. So yeah, I bowled with Amit Mishra for like 2 hours, and we spoke about grips, what I should do, what he does, and how difficult it is in India to play at any level, how competitive it is. Like Amit Mishra told me stories of how it took him a long time to get through because all these age group trials were very hard and stuff like that. So yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was fun to see how tall Yuvraj Singh was, and how he practices and how Sehwag plays spin and all that. So yeah, I mean, I've done a few: South Africa, India, England as well. So yeah.
Oh wow! Okay, so you are a veteran net bowler then to all these people, or pie chucker as KP likes
Kevin
to call.
Pietersen says, yeah.
Yeah, but when you were bowling to Raina and Sehwag, I'm curious. Did you feel you were bowling badly, or that they were just batting wonderfully?
Obviously, I was bowling badly, or I mean, whatever I bowled, it was still bad. I mean, Sehwag didn't play one ball off me off his front foot. He was just hanging back and doing what he pleased. I mean, many years later, I saw that Ashwin interview on YouTube where Ashwin said that he doesn't rate spinners, and now I can relate to it. Yeah, he didn't. I was a net bowler. Why would he rate me? But
yeah,
Raina
and Ashwin says that he
Yeah.
decided that he will bowl bad balls to Sehwag.
him. Yeah, and with Raina, I thought that anything I bowled to him would go for six. I mean, obviously, there was a huge gap between my skill and his skills, but he could just hit anything out of the ground. I thought, he did. Honestly, every ball I bowled, I think I bowled 20 balls to him, and every one of them went for at least a boundary. It had to be a boundary. I mean, he's just so quick on his feet, and I think he was trying something out. It was probably charging a spinner. What then I realized that Sehwag just doesn't play a spin off the front foot. He just hang back and pull me everywhere, pull and cut, whatever I bowled.
Mm-hmm. Have you bowled to any of the Bangladeshi batters?
Yeah, in match situations, of course. So I've got out Mushfiq Rahim first ball once in a corporate league match. There used to be a tournament called the Corporate League where he just got back from playing in Sri Lanka Test Series, I think, and Dev Watmore was at the ground to see him bat, and I just got out. I took the wicket of a batsman called Shamsur Rahman. He later played Test cricket, and Mushfiq was like the teenage superstar, and I got him out LBW first ball. He doesn't remember, but yeah, that the only time I've ever bowled to him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, this was in a corporate tournament, but did you also play the Dhaka Premier League, or you were not in any of those teams?
I just played one season for a team called Old DOHS Club. It was in 2006-7. 7-8. That was the only season I played. But the other seasons I've played just the rung below. It's called the First Division. It's like the English Premier League. It's how they call it. It's the Dhaka Premier League, and then it goes down to first, second, third division. So I've played the First Division for 9 years.
Yeah. You did mention, of course, in that previous podcast that I spoke about. We were talking in depth about the Dhaka Premier League, and how beloved it is of many of the old time Bangladesh fans, and even now it retains quite a bit of its charm. And you have, of course, you wrote that piece and things. But maybe you can talk a bit about that here too, and about the sort of the prestige that tournament carries, despite the BPL and everything else. It's almost like the Dhaka Premier League has a certain cachet to it, and winning it means something, and doing well in it. You have politicians giving you hefty prizes, and you have there is a certain ego for all the owners there. So tell us a bit about the Dhaka Premier League.
So it's the fabric of Bangladesh cricket. It's where Bangladesh cricket comes from. It's where the foundation of Bangladesh cricket is Dhaka Premier League and that league system. It's not it's a very I think the closest thing I can tell you what happened was Sid Monga had come to Bangladesh to do a story called Red Sun Rising, which we later wrote together. It was it was on TCM
Yeah,
2016.
I remember that
15,
story.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he had come to Dhaka for a week, and the Dhaka Premier League was going on during May or June. And I took him to one of the matches, and he couldn't believe that I've never written about it. He said, "Why haven't you written about it?" I said, "Well, it's Dhaka Premier League." He's like, "Have you realized that this is IPL before IPL? Because it has all the intrigue of owners, coaches, captains, club fans, rivalries, like the multiple rivalries." And as I'm telling him, he's telling me what to say about Dhaka Premier League. He's like, "You have to write a piece on this. You promised me that you'll do it in the next 6 months." I said, "Yeah, I will, no problem." But it caught his eye very quickly because he thought it was a bit like, he said it was a bit like the Mumbai cricket scene, but with a lot of money in it, with a lot more riding on it, because there is the practicality of promotion, demotion, promotion and going down the leagues. That cannot, like, that is like the big no. You cannot go down. You have to stay up in the league. Then you have the connection with the cricket board now using it as their voting mechanism. Like the way the cricket board's constitution works is also through the Dhaka Premier League's points. You know how each team
So
gets
you
a
have
vote.
more say in the working of the
Huge,
board if you do well.
huge,
Yeah.
yeah. And the strange thing in Bangladesh cricket is, um, in the category of the Dhaka leagues or the club teams, 12 board directors can be elected. But for the rest of the country, for the other 63 divisions, districts, and 8 divisions, you can have 10 directors. Just imagine how big it is. So this league has 12 board directors. The whole country has 10 board directors. That's number one. Number
Wow.
two, you have the money involved. And since the 70s, it has, sustained Bangladesh cricketers. Um, Cricket wasn't the biggest sport; it was football. So that culture comes from club football, where the two big teams are Abohani. It's now called Abohani Limited, and the other one is Mohammedan Sporting Club. These are the two big rivals. They are like the Mohun Bagan and East Bengal of Dhaka. And in a way, it actually, sports lovers or football fans in Kolkata knows about this rivalry in football in Bangladesh. Abohani Mohammedan is a big rivalry in Dhaka. So that has translated to cricket, and then cricket started to do well, won the ICC trophy, and for a long time, Sri Lankan cricketers like Rana Tunga, Arvinda De Silva, Sana Jayasuriya, they've played. Wasim Akram has played. Neil Fairbrother was a really sort of a left field call for Abohani to bring Neil Fairbrother and Ray Illingworth because they did well in the '92 World Cup. People had money in their pocket. They own stakes in Abohani, and they said, okay, let's bring this player. Let's make a big splash in the newspapers. So I remember going to the Abohani club ground to see this little left-hander called Neil Fairbrother having a knock, and then next day he scores a big 100 against or a 90 against Mohammedan, in the sort of the Dhaka Derby. So it's everything. Nowadays, it has taken a bit of a backseat because of BPL and all. But recently, Shakib said that the BPL is worse than DPL. DPL is more well organized. It is more well organized. Teams are made way before the season starts, and training is quite good. They have many of them now have their own training facilities. So it is as very important to Bangladesh cricket. It is also very powerful. These clubs have directors who basically run Bangladesh cricket. So they can be, they have abused their power sometimes, or nowadays they do. But you cannot deny how big it is, how important it is in Bangladesh.
Yeah, I mean the stakes are so high that umpires were getting bullied, umpires were getting beaten up after games, and
Yeah.
this is not something that happens in cricket in other countries regularly. So
Yeah, and I think if you remember the first sort of couple of paragraphs where I described team owner arriving in a helicopter in a ground next to the Fatullah Cricket Stadium, walks in. He's like the richest from the richest family in the country, and he walks in, tells his team that if you can beat Abhani today, you're gonna get a big bonus. And he just flies out from with the helicopter, black helicopter, goes back. His team wins. he does pay that bonus. And last year the team was the league champion, Sheikh Jamal Dhanmondi Club. So it doesn't surprise me at all that big money comes to DPL, Dhaka Premier League, or the league system first, and then comes to BPL, which is a bit of a dubious tournament these days. So I think, and long may it continue because it just sustains so many cricketers in the country.
Yeah, fantastic. Talking about cricketers in the country, I wanted to, touch upon uh, a couple of other cricketers who you have covered very closely and who you have written about. One, I think we can't finish this podcast without talking about one of my favorite Bangladesh cricketers and, somebody who you have written about so well, Mashrafe. So, tell us a bit about your relationship with Mashrafe, how he was as a person, and also, his sort of evolution. I mean, he has pretty much done everything there is to do. Not only has he captain, not only has he been the all-rounder, done batting, bowling, fielding, everything. He's also now, his foray into politics, and he speaks his mind, and he's a quite a original.
Yeah, I call him a successful rebel also, because he doesn't he I mean he's not a anti-establishment guy per se, but he would do anything for his teammates. I think that's the first thing that struck about him. He goes out of his way. Captaining a Bangladesh team at that time when they were doing slightly well was difficult because people would become instantly famous and instantly infamous. So to handle those things, I remember when Rubel Hossain got into trouble just before the 2015 World Cup, and the beautiful way he, just managed that situation. It was difficult for Rubel. He was in jail for a couple of nights over a weekend, and to bring him back, I mean, his confidence would have been shot. I mean, he wouldn't have believed that he would go to the World Cup. Mashrafe made sure that he went to the World Cup. That's one example. But following him around during that time when Bangladesh they were winning a lot. That also opened up my eyes about his humility. And then there was a great book that came out called Mashrafe in Bengal. It is by Deobrata Mukherjee. He's a former journalist in Bangladesh. He wrote a book about how Mashrafe's humility comes from his grandmother, who was from a very rich family in Narail, but she was a school teacher. And being a school teacher, she didn't want to show off her jewelries or her richness to the parents of the children that she was teaching. So she would always be a lot more humble, and that's where Mashrafe grew up. Mashrafe actually grew up with his grandparents more. I think his dad or his parents had they lived nearby, but he would always hang out with his grandparents, and there he learned the understanding of life and why humility matters. Doesn't have to be a public figure, but that's where it comes from. And I realized in that whole piece that I did with him, walking around every day just trying to figure out what he does, is that if someone doesn't even matter to him, and if he thinks at a humanitarian level that this person needs a bit of help, even if it's just good advice, he would give it. I didn't write this part, but there's this one mad guy who bowls in the Bangladesh nets for a long time, or did bowl at some point. He's quite old, and he would bowl like spin, and people just humor him, saying that, yeah, you've got a future. But he was in his mid-30s. So one day he came up to Mashrafe and said that, in a very crazy sentence, he said, do you think I still can play for Bangladesh? And Mashrafe said, come here, sit. These are journalists here. I'm telling you the truth in front of them. You're never going to make it because you're 30 plus, and it's difficult in living in Dhaka the way you live. You don't earn anything. And that guy started to cry, and he said, but you're talking to me in a very mean way. Mashrafe said, no, I'm telling you the truth. I can give you a lot of money. I can set you up. But no, I'm telling you the truth. It's not going to happen for you. You're too old. You don't even have a club. Why don't you go back home or start doing something else? I'll help you do that. This is not for you. I see you bowl every day. There's no point. That's the thing. I mean, he that sense of humility also touches. When I went to cover his election campaign for one day, I roamed around his constituency, you can call it, in Narail. It's in down south. It's near Khulna. It's in the Khulna division. So Narail is a small town, but it has like he went through all the villages and school grounds to do his speeches, and it was something else. It was just him on his bike right ahead, with his chadar wrapped around, and him going fast and with cars behind him. He would stop. The villagers would come out and feed him some sweet or something. He would go to the next venue. I think it was one afternoon, and then we figured out that this guy's cut out for politics, very very much so, in the sense that he doesn't just make the big speeches. I think he's also done a lot in Narail. It is a bit of a out of the place area. It has down south. It has to be the town has to be close to one of the main highways. That's where the economy booms. I think Narail isn't in one of those highways, so it needed him. It needed someone like him and he's a son of the soil. He would swim in the river. I've written about it. Rabid Bhai actually has written probably the best piece about Mashrafe in his wedding, where he went to pick up Dev Watmore in the car. Dev Watmore got out of the car and he said, "I'm never getting on the car with him. He drives too fast." And then he was so excited with so many, journalists or fans or people coming from Dhaka. He went up a coconut tree, got them coconut on his wedding day. His father got very mad at him. I don't know where that piece is now. It was in the old BCB website. Rabid Bhai used to write a blog there. But I think it's one of the greatest pieces of writing I've read in Bangladesh.
And I think you have quoted it in that piece that you wrote.
Yeah. Rabid Bhai had to dig through his laptop to find that piece for me. And Rabid Bhai, I think I should also mention here that Rabid Bhai was the first ones who wrote so beautifully about Bangladeshi players and would, literally go down to their homes and villages and try to write about the human side of them. So I think that's also one of the reasons why I want to do that, because he has also explained to me that, readers want to know that extra bit about a player. And if you can give them that, the whole idea of Rabid Bhai telling me this was that you're not the guy that matters here. The guy you write about matters. So I think these small advices from Rabid Bhai and Utpal Shubro and people like them have always helped me. So with Mashrafe's piece as well, I was just a background guy, just, tried to understand what it was about. But then the funny thing was the day he announced that he was going to get into politics. So there was a huge rush in the cricket board and where he was going to stand and talk. And somehow I, trying to protect my phone, which was the recorder, I stood next to him. And the photo has become timeless that I'm standing next to him. He must have been giving his, announcing his candidacy in the election and me standing right next to him. Much to the chagrin of his
photograph for posterity. Yeah. after when he becomes the prime minister, you will that photo you can get famous with that photo. Yeah. So I mean this is wonderful. I linked that, obviously all those pieces you should read and find out. Lastly, before I wrap up, I do want to touch upon that fateful day in Christchurch, which of course Isam has written about. He has spoken to me on the podcast about when the day of the terrorist attack there. But one little detail I want you to sort of think about and maybe examine is that the moment when Tamim Iqbal sent you that message. Now, I find it remarkable that an international cricketer, is now in a scene where a terrorist attack is happening and they are outside this mosque, and the first person he messages is you, and is a journalist. And so you get to know about it, and then you go to the scene and you're trying to find out what's happening. Is that because of his relationship he shares with you? Is that because he was just? Why do you think he messaged you? He could have messaged anyone.
Practically, it made a bit of sense because we were the last people they saw in the Hagley Oval's parking lot when they were leaving. So the plan was a short session. It was the day before the test match. Mahmudullah was the stand-in captain. He had done the press conference. It ran a bit late. Luckily for them, to be honest with you, now that I think of it.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. It ran a bit late. Then they were playing football in the ground, which also ran a bit late. Then there was a lot of shouting saying that, come, we have to go because the mosque is not going to wait. The prayer is not going to wait for us. So they got on the bus. We were standing right in the step of the bus, me and two other journalists, Utpal Shubro and Mazharuddin. and there were other guys as well. I think there were some TV guys there as well. So we were the last ones and in tours of New Zealand you only have players and journalists, where we, as I had mentioned before, we, if we are going to the practice sessions here, we go to the team hotel a lot on tours. That's the place to hang out, to be honest. Would go and hang out outside the hotel or inside the hotel, wherever we are allowed to stand. And then players come out. Sometimes we talk to them off the record, get some news and this and that. Tamim, why he called me? I think he told me once, but I honestly think it was more of the practicality of it. He actually called not to cover the thing. It was about getting them out of that place. They were feeling so helpless there.
To get help. Yeah.
Yeah. So he said, call the police. Isam bhai, just call the police, tell them what is happening here. There's a lot of shooting. I cut the line. Tamim has had this habit of telling me that something big has happened on a very slow news day, just to prank me. I thought he was pranking me, but it was probably the darkest prank anyone could ever do. But then some unbelievable things happened. There was a car that turned up at the gate of the parking lot. This lady gave us a lift near the mosque. How the hell she knew it was that mosque? I didn't even know which mosque it was. I just said mosque. She took us there. We went in, and I thought it was the team that got attacked, but then later realized what was happening. And then they ran out, and one of them grabbed me and said, just run with us. So we ran through, and that's how it happened. But Tamim calling me at that point, I feel it a bit of a privilege also that, from a journalist point of view, that they just wanted me to, help them out. And my dad asked me later that what were you going to help them with? What did you have?
So, what did you have? Yeah.
And I think the most tragic part of it was my wife was pregnant at that time, and I had put her through a lot that year. I went to Mumbai and I had a nervous breakdown because the New Zealand, the passport agency there, the agency that did the visa, they said it would take me 2 weeks. And I said, I'm just giving back my passport, I'm going home. Because I was out a lot that year in 2019. Then this thing happened. And the other thing was when my mom called, like she would call every morning, like afternoon in Bangladesh. So she called, early morning in Bangladesh. She would wake up for her prayers. And I said, just watch the TV. She thought it was an earthquake because Christchurch had an earthquake almost every day.
Earthquake, correct.
Yes, she thought it was an earthquake. She said, what the hell? There's nothing on TV. Suddenly she sees me all sweaty and dark and talking about a terrorist attack. And
wow.
Yeah, so that's how it went down. But yeah, I mean, it was tough for all of us, but I think somehow we all managed to get out of it, of the mental trauma.
Definitely. And, purely from a journalist point of view and purely from, to have been there on that day to experience it. And Isam, not only experienced it, but he also wrote extensively about it, spoke about it, and covered it extremely well for Cricinfo. And also there's a piece that long piece in the book. Can't recommend it highly enough, not just that piece, but also the rest of the book. Please pick it up.
Thank you.
Again, as I said, if you're in Bangladesh, it is easy to pick up. I will give the link. If not, you may have to wait a bit, but hopefully it'll come out soon and you can get it. Thank you, Isam, for this. And always a pleasure to learn more about Bangladesh cricket and talk Bangladesh cricket with you. I mean, for us, we are often, consumed by Indian cricket and all that happens around it. And but always a pleasure to hear more from Dhaka and Bangladesh.
Thank you, Sid. I'm really looking forward to read Gideon Haig's book as well. I'm going to order it soon. I've already bought War Man is the shooting, and also the second book. I think the second book is
Mike Coward's Cricket Beyond the Bazaar.
Yes. I had it when I think I bought it in India a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, thank you for doing this. I mean, we need more people like you just, not just republishing books. Maybe you can think about doing some, books of young writers who, come through. I don't know how it must be quite difficult, but hopefully someday we'll see 81 Omar as one of the,
Hopefully that's the plan. I mean, we have started with bringing back old classics. Of course, we are doing this as a hobby and we are all otherwise employed. But hopefully, at some point of time, I'm hoping this will be a venue for also publishing new writers, young writers, new books. Because I feel that cricket books need some kind of benevolent publisher. I mean, in the end of the day, you don't do it for money. And if there is any publisher who's trying to publish cricket books to make money, then I think that is the wrong way to go. We are in it for the passion, and if it makes money, good. But if not, we would love to keep it going for the love of the game and the love of literature, which are very important. I mean, personally, you have spoken about the writers who inspired you. I got into this whole cricket writing and cricket coverage business because of writers who inspired me. And yeah, ultimately, writers are very important to inspire the next generation. So hopefully, all that will come to fruition. Anyway, in the meanwhile, if you like our podcast, please rate and review it. 81 All Out is on all platforms. You can also go to our website, 81allout.com. We have over 155 episodes now. There you can listen to previous ones. Isam himself has been on, I think, 3, if not more. I'm sure I spoke to you about some Bangladesh World Cup performances as well. So maybe 3 or 4. I'll link all that. You can also, listen to a lovely podcast I did with Isam and Rabid on the Bangladesh cricket scene before they got test status. And it's a very beautiful tale about life before tests and how cricket was kept alive there. So all that will be linked. Isam has already mentioned, but yes, The Summer Game by Gideon Haigh. That should be the next cricket book that you read. And trust me, it is a masterful book. It is about cricket in the 50s and 60s, but Gideon writes with such passion and such love for the game that you will begin to really, really enjoy the way it is written and the amount of reporting that has gone into it. And we hope to join you in a week or 10 days' time for our next episode. Thank you, Isam, and have a good day.
India have won the series. They're going to get back for 2. India home. Lords goes wild.